Today's episode of the StallSide podcast was brought to you by Rood Riddle Veterinary Pharmacy.
Yeah, well, welcome to StallSide. We're pretty excited to be here at the Kentucky Horse Park. It's a fantastic facility, and a lot of people come to this town, and if they don't come to the horse park, I think they've really missed out. So I'll actually introduce my co-host, Dr. Bart Barber. So Bart, just tell us a bit about yourself.
Good morning, Bart Barber. I work at Rood Riddle Equine Hospital. I'm in the ambulatory department, and I also have a role in our pharmacy there at the hospital. Came in 1998 and never got over the thrill of being here.
That's great. Thanks, Bart. And I'd like to introduce you to my colleague here to my right, Dr. Kate Christie.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for coming. I used to say a new member of the internal medicine department at Rood Riddle, but it's my 5th foaling season back as a clinician. I'm from Nova Scotia originally, ended up down here for an internship, and then after my internal medicine residency was lucky enough to come back and have thoroughly enjoyed foaling season with 2 young kids, which has been a whole new challenge, but love being back here and happy to answer any questions you guys have for us today.
Yeah, it's great to have Kate back on staff. Dr. David Alexander, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hello, I'm part of our ambulatory team. I've been here, I think, going on 4 years now. It's kind of a bit of a blur. Still enjoying it quite a bit, though. Learn something new every day. I mainly do sport horse medicine and then reproduction. So a little bit of both right now, but staying busy running around Central Kentucky.
Yeah, it's definitely the time of year to do that. Yeah, and I'm Pete Morresey. I'm a colleague, work on the same internal medicine service with Kate. I've sort of been here since 2005, which sort of seems like a ridiculously long time. I'm not from around here, as you might have noticed as well. I came to the United States for 2 years in 1996, and I'm still here, which either means that I can't find my way out or they won't let me back in and you're stuck with me. So, let's get underway with some questions that have been sent into us from our audience. Whitney, would you like to give us our first question?
Do you the mic? Are we passing you the mic so you can read these out loud?
Who is Dr. Barber's favorite daughter?
Who's my favorite daughter? So I do have 5 children, 4 daughters, and that's that. Most people would say they don't have a favorite child, and that's not true with me. But it's fluid. So it depends on. It's more what have you done for me lately? So just this morning, my daughter Mackenzie stopped out of her way to come and help me with a horse. So today it's Mackenzie.
That's pretty nice. Today I got yelled at for toasting toast too much. So.
Yeah. So, no. That's the way of a parent. I mean, you're always in trouble.
Yeah.
Parents get in more trouble with their kids than kids get in from their parents.
That's probably fair. And there's toast and there's toast.
Well,
right?
She likes warm bread but not toast, so it's a bit of a challenge at the age of 2. That's good.
Okay. Well, very diplomatically answered.
All right, so I'll roll with some of these additional questions. So we'll move from the family side and get into a little bit of horse medicine here. So this is from Kara Fleckenstein from our Facebook page. So she asks, I can't find any updated information on the Gluck Equine Research Center site. Do we have any updates as far as rotavirus B prevention goes for the 2025 foaling season and any potential headway on a vaccine?
Okay. Excellent question.
Yeah, really good question.
Looking forward to 2025. That is some forward thinking.
Yeah, seriously. That's right. I've got to get through 2024 first. I'll sort of take this one. Anybody in the audience actually have a mare and have foals or know anybody that's on a breeding operation? Well, yeah, right. So what's happened in the last couple of years, and it's been quite a challenge, is there's actually been a novel rotavirus come about. Now, there's historically been rotavirus affecting the foal population all around the world. And there's various different groupings of rotavirus. There's rotavirus A, which is the one that we've tended to have to deal with the most. That's historically been the issue. And that's also the group of rotaviruses that affects multiple species. And this is the one that actually people get because you may or may not know, but there's actually a rotavirus A, which is a very common cause of diarrhea in human infants. And one of the largest causes of mortality worldwide is actually rotavirus A diarrhea in human infants. And it's not necessarily that it can jump between species, but you have certain families of viruses that affect certain species. Some of them do jump, some of them recombine, but that's rotavirus A. That's the one that we deal with the most. What we're running into at the moment is something called Rota B. And rotavirus B actually is of ruminant origin. It's thought that it may have come from originally a goat, and that's one that's actually affecting the foals at the moment. And there's also a rotavirus C as well, which we really don't have to deal with too much. But coming back to rotavirus B, what we saw a couple of years ago in the spring of 2021 is all of a sudden we had what seemed to be an outbreak of diarrhea in foals starting anywhere from 24 to 36 hours of age all the way up to about 5 days. And it was a very characteristic syndrome. They would run a high fever, they would go off the mare, they would want to suckle, and they would break with a very high volume watery diarrhea. Sometimes they would be colicky, sometimes they'd have to be reflux, but the predominant clinical signs were fever, going off the mare, high volume watery diarrhea. Now, we didn't have a test for it at that point, and a lot of them were actually co-infected with something called Clostridium, which is a common soil organism which can cause diarrhea in its own right. But as people started to look at this syndrome, because it was unusual, because we were seeing it in all areas of our catchment for foals at the same time, it makes you think, is it something environmental or is it something highly infectious? And it ended up being the latter. It was something highly infectious. A little bit of testing was done towards the end of it, and you could actually see these viral particles with the electron microscope, and there was some very clever lab work done with PCR, and all of a sudden it's diagnosed as this rotavirus group B. Well, that allowed us to have a test on the ground ready to go for the following spring in 2022, and we had a huge number of positives. Same sort of clinical syndrome, high volume watery diarrhea, foals would run fevers and go off the mare. The good thing is the treatment is very similar to the treatment for a lot of other causes of diarrhea. Foal comes in, you want to take them off the mare, get them off milk, because undigested milk is a problem. Think about it when you were little. If you got diarrhea when you're little, what's the first thing your mother did? She took you off milk. And remember, mother was always right. She told you she was always right on a regular basis, probably because she was always right. But getting the milk out of these foals is very important. It's very difficult to try to keep feeding these foals milk when you're actually dealing with the diarrhea. So that's the easy thing to hospitalize them, because we can take them off feeding, a little bit hard on the farm. We give them broad spectrum antibacterial coverage because being foals, they're very susceptible to other infections, and we do a few other things to look after their gut. A few days off the mare on fluids, wean them back onto the mare. Almost all of them did really well. Now that has been quite a problem for the last couple of years. This year, there's been some situations where farms that were affected a lot initially have not been affected so much, because the mares start to see this virus and they start to put antibodies in their colostrum, and it gives the foal some form of protection. Now, what progress is being made here? The Gluck Equine Research Center, which is an arm of the University of Kentucky, has done a lot of research work on this. And they are currently in a testing phase for a vaccine. And if we can have a vaccine, they will then be able to generate what we call hyperimmune plasma, which will be able to give to the foals to give them some immunity when they're born. Now, that is commonly done with a lot of other diseases. There's just nothing on the market yet for Rota B. But these are coming. And currently, there are foals being born from mares that have been vaccinated to sort of see what the response is. So I would hope by 2025 that we would actually, if not having something commercially available, at least we would have something that we could put into trials to sort of see if it's effective. So help's coming. I mean, it's difficult when you're in the face of an outbreak to say, what do you do? But it takes a long time to actually generate a vaccine. It takes a long time to accumulate the money to finance generating a vaccine. And just taking you back to what I started with, rotavirus A affects a lot of species. Rotavirus group A affects people. So there's always going to be a whole lot more money to investigate rotavirus A than there is to investigate rotavirus B, which in foals has been quite a regional problem around here. And so that's why there hasn't been too many updates on the Gluck website. It's because they're in that pause between this is what we're going to do and this is what we have found out. But tell your friends there's a lot of work going on and the cavalry is coming.
Yeah. So in the meantime, we've learned a lot about animal husbandry, right? And how to handle these. One of the things that's been very helpful, I think we've been able to, you guys see a lot of them, but not the volume that we see on the farm. So this was a high morbidity disease. Low mortality, meaning almost everybody in the barn got it, but it didn't kill very many horses, because we got pretty good at treating it. But it was a hassle. So one of the things we did this year, as soon as it hit, we took the horses out of the barns, started foaling outside. Barns a lot of times are a convenience for people, not so great for horses, because you take these diseases and you give them the perfect environment. It's moist, no sunlight, low air movement, and things can stay in the barns a long time. So once we started foaling the mares out in the fields, and it takes a lot more work for the people, especially on rainy days, but that seemed to short circuit it.
Yeah, and that's the system that's here. But in other parts of the world, mares foal outside all the time. And so it'd be harder for this type of virus to get a toehold, but you're exactly right. Barns are convenient for people, but they concentrate disease.
Yep.
Any comments, David, in cases you've seen?
No, I mean, I don't do a ton of foal work, so I don't see it as much as you guys have probably seen it. But kind of what Dr. Barber was saying, I feel like we've learned so much in the husbandry aspect of it that we're able to get ahead of it pretty early on and manage it a little bit better than initially.
And it really did put the onus on people to actually be clean, to actually stop their people walking all around the farm, touching every foal, spreading things as they go, washing their hands, wearing gloves, booties, foot dips, and actually being very proactive at dealing with the foals on the farm that actually had signs of diarrhea to make sure that we weren't spreading it. But again, just tell your friends, a lot of work is being done in the background. There's not a lot of noise about that at the moment because this is in the information accumulation phase, but a lot will be coming down the pipe.
And we've had Emma Adam on the show a couple times, and she's fabulous, and trust me, she's doing a lot of work.
Yep.
The whole group is doing a lot, even though there might not be a lot of updates. There's just not a lot to say right now, but they'll get there. They'll get there, and there's some great people working on it.
Awesome. Well, the next one actually comes from one of my colleagues over at the museum. She's a hunter jumper and has a horse here in Kentucky, and she's wondering, she's found Kentucky's mugginess and ground softness to sometimes have poor effect on her horse's hoof strength and coats. She was wondering if there are some things local owners can do to protect from the sometimes adverse, particularly wet parts of the climate.
That's funny. I've never seen mud in Kentucky in the whole time I've been here. That's a real surprise to me that happens.
Yeah, from you haven't been outside from November to March.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I live a very sheltered existence.
There's a lot of things that you can do, but there's Scott Morrison has actually developed a hoof dressing called the Costco. And it's developed just exactly for that. Because there's some salts in it. There's some turpentine. There's a lot of good stuff in there. People have used it, and because you're right, that dry wet cycle it plays havoc on horses' feet. Putting a good quality hoof dressing on there is very helpful.
Yeah, and what Bart said is exactly right, because the hoof is like fairly dynamic. It expands and contracts, and getting wet, dry causes it to crack, right? And so there's a lot of supplements that have like biotin and methionine in them to help the cross-linking and help the collagen actually be stronger. And so hoof health comes down to, you can't avoid mud. But then horses have run in mud since the cows came home. I mean, they've always had varying surfaces. Horses, as a rule, can have some very good hooves, superbly designed for what it does. Horses can run over stony surfaces, wet, muddy surfaces, and do fine. But it does put the onus on us to say, again, as Bart talked about, dress the hoof appropriately with something topical that sort of keeps it moist and allows it to harden up. And if you do have a horse that has a problem, look for supplements that have biotin in them especially, which actually helps the horn of the hoof actually become harder. And that'll actually help. Plus, really good farrier care, right? Don't let the toes get too long. If they're starting to crack, get it addressed. Because those cracks, when they travel, it's very easy to get like a toe abscess, get some gravel. It's very, very easy to happen. So really the onus is on not only medications, but also being very proactive with the hoof, the health of the hoof that can be addressed by your farrier.
So, one thing I would caution against, a lot of if your horses are already on a lot of supplements, be careful to get something, because Peter mentioned biotin, but unfortunately a lot of the hoof supplements, they hear that copper is great, and they do a more in there. And a really interesting case, Scott Morrison went to England one time, and there was a group of horses over there, and they asked him to come and look at their hoof health. And, he went through everything they were doing. It looked great. And then they talked about supplements, and they go, no, we got that covered. And they showed him everything that the horses were on. Well, he pulled some hair samples, and those horses were actually being over-supplemented.
Yeah.
So once they got them off the supplements, because there's so many things that are in all of those, and just be careful to keep your supplements simple.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem we also have. I mean, Kate and I strike it on medicine. These horses come in and they have these issues, and they've got to have their supplements. And I'm not kidding you. I had one come in once. It was on 18 different supplements. And so I took it off everything. Well, of course, I was not very popular. But the best thing we could do was actually just get it back to basics. Let's just prune the rose bush and let it grow back healthy, right? There was so much junk going into this horse. There were so many things that were being over-supplemented, or some things that were out and out interfering. So you just want to do the basics well. Good diet, good farrier care, and when needed, strategic supplementation, because Steve Reed said it best, more treatment is not better care. Right?
That's right.
And that's a really profound statement. Piling all of the stuff into the horse doesn't mean you're taking any better care of it. All you're doing is actually supporting the animal remedies industry, and not everything is necessary. A good quality diet and good quality management, farrier care, etc., goes a long way to alleviating your problems.
Yeah. We even trimming feet too often can be a problem, because it's a little bit like cutting a tree. When you hit that with the rasp, you open up those pores. So you don't want the feet to get real long, but at the same time, we found we had one real wet winter, and we were getting a lot of abscesses, and there were a group of horses. They said, okay, let's just trim these every 2 weeks. Well, those were the worst horses, because you were opening things up. Again, you don't want them to get real long, but at the same time, just overdoing it is a problem sometimes.
All right. Well, this is one that kind of just popped into my head. So obviously, as we move towards the future, there's a lot of advances happening in y'all's world. And so I was wondering, kind of from each of your perspectives, kind of what you're looking forward to most, or what excites you most about, say, the next 5-10 years of your specific part of the veterinary care world.
Kate?
Oh man, okay.
We'll let you go
I'll do
first.
my
Ladies
best.
first.
So internal medicine, again, is kind of my area of expertise. Well, expertise is a strong word, but where my interests lie. A lot of the things that we do on a daily basis change with the medications that are available to us, or the medications that we have that we know some information about in the horse. There's several medications coming down the pipeline that always get me excited, that are maybe used in human medicine, that do have applications in the horse world. And I think that's kind of where my interest lies, is when we sort of get more and more information about not only how those drugs, if you give it to a horse orally, is that horse going to absorb it, and does it act in the horse the same way it does in the human, and what those drugs actually do in the horse. So we call it pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics, if you want me to say those words. But the toughest thing, I think, with that in my field is that a lot of these drugs are cost prohibitive in humans with insurance. And if you have a horse, insurance does not cover medications typically, or, monthly medications. And so some of this can be really, really difficult to get more information about these drugs, because the money for the research isn't there. So I guess the biggest area that I'm interested in is metabolic disease in the horse. So equine metabolic syndrome, high insulin, equine Cushing's disease, or PPID. Those are areas that I have a lot of interest in. And I think my interest in them lies in the fact that I love babies, but I also love the older horse population. And I love working through a lot of the problems that they can have to try to lengthen their lives, because I'd really like them to stick around a bit longer. And we do see a lot of those things. And secondary to a lot of the metabolic stuff comes, I'm sure everyone has known someone with a horse that has an insulin disorder that has developed laminitis. And certainly that can be something that limits or ends a horse's life. So anything that we have coming down the pipeline that can help avoid some of these things is really interesting. And the nicest thing with that is that there is a lot of research going into diabetes management in the human. As more and more of our population kind of is affected by that. So some of those drugs have started coming into the equine world for management of high insulin in horses, and we've had a lot of good success with some of those newer medications. both for weight loss and management of high insulin and the prevention of laminitis or preventing recurrent episodes of laminitis. So I think that that's an area that I'm quite excited about in terms of improving quality of life in these horses and kind of prolonging their comfortable lives. So that's I don't know.
That's good stuff.
Insulin's boring, but
Yeah,
it's important.
Insulin's boring, but it's the key to everything, right?
Yeah.
It's absolutely. David?
I've only been out of school for 4 years, but it really is impressive, even the changes I've seen in that short time. So I do a lot of sport horse medicine, so I get a lot of reward out of helping a horse continue to do their job, staying sound, being able to continue to compete at high levels. Even the use of polyacrylamide gels recently, that's been really impressive and really interesting to see the results after using them. We have horses where they're a little bit older, they can't quite do what they were doing. Steroids aren't giving them the comfort that they were giving them before, and now we're able to offer them, another level of care to kind of allow them to maintain a level of a job. So,
Bart?
For me, and I've said this before, one of the biggest changes that I've seen is the podiatry care that's happened, and we struggled with a lot of our older laminitis horses, and stuff that would that we had to watch die before is routinely saved now. So that's probably the biggest change I've seen. And then of course there's been lots of changes in diagnostics. We used to lug these big bags of X-ray cassettes around, and you'd go plug in the barn and shoot one, then you'd run it back to the clinic, run it through the processor, hope the processor didn't eat your films, and go back to the clinic and make your diagnosis. Now we have the ability to actually walk out into a field with an injured horse and shoot radiographs right there, because our generator is battery operated, the computer is battery operated, and so you can walk right out in the field and get an excellent image standing right there next to the horse. Our ultrasound quality is better, endoscopy, now we've got CT, MRI, PET scan. There's cool stuff, but I know there's more diagnostic stuff around the corner. There's lots of StallSide tests that are coming. So just getting results faster, knowing that's one of the huge advantages we have here in central Kentucky is our lab work. If we take something to the lab and we can stand over their shoulders and while they run it, whereas in other parts of the country, they ship it off FedEx and hope they have answers in a couple days. And by the time they get their answers, things have changed. But we're moving now to where you have just StallSide answers, which is great.
Yeah, and picking up on that a little bit, you hear about information technology and that sort of thing, and artificial intelligence. That's going to affect how we actually interpret our blood work and our ability to collect blood work in a more timely fashion, get those answers in a more timely fashion, actually be able to provide more rapid diagnostics, but also harvesting that information to have a look at the population, say, okay, we got all this blood work out of this group of horses. What does it mean? Are there age-specific ranges for certain values that we've never found before because we've never had the ability to aggressively look at that data? So that, for me, is going to be the interesting thing, because we're going to pick out trends, and we may be able to sort of see, hey, these horses, if we regularly profile them, are on this trajectory. It means you're going to get something like an insulin resistance long before we can actually detect that insulin resistance. Or we're actually going to have like an athletic breakdown, right? We're going to have a horse that may have a fracture, or a horse that may have a tendon injury. We will get to the point where we can actually profile these horses, look at them regularly, and sort of say, the parameters we're watching in this horse are changing in a direction, which means this horse is not coping with the training that's being asked of it, or it's also actually at risk of developing a certain degenerative condition, and we can potentially alter the management of that horse, or something about the way we medicate that horse that actually helps it avoid that outcome. So that's, for me, the exciting stuff, and it sort of picks up a little bit on what you heard from the others, as we're getting to the point where it's not like sort of individualized precision medicine like they talk about with people, but get to the point where we can look at a group of horses and say, you guys are going to have a more chance of doing this, so let's get ahead of it, because we don't want to see laminitis because it's often so tragic. We don't want to see horses with severe insulin resistance because of laminitis, but just from a general welfare standpoint. I mean, it's pretty tough to see them struggle in the heat. It's pretty tough to see them have reproductive problems. It's pretty tough to see these sort of orthopedic breakdowns when we've got the potential with technology that's coming to actually intervene and stop those things occurring. And as far as changes in the profession goes, I mean, that's something that we're struggling with a bit at the moment, and maybe you've heard, is that there's a bit of a shortage of equine veterinarians, and it's getting more acute. Not everybody is as young as Bart, and fit and healthy and in the prime of his career. Some of them are sort of getting towards the end of it, like myself, and not everybody is in the middle here ready to sort of carry the torch. And so for me, what's going to be interesting is how the equine veterinary profession solves the problem of actually continuing to provide timely, excellent service to their clients. And that's going to involve a little bit of give and take on both sides. We're going to have to change our business model, and clients maybe have to meet us halfway, and perhaps you go to a system where there's more haul into clinics because there's less people to do ambulatory work.
Or the other sacrifice that horse owners might have to have. They might not have access to the same person all the time.
Oh, yeah, time, yeah.
So if we can do some job sharing, I think that's something the younger veterinarians would be interested in, not being accessible 7 days a week, having some personal away time. You know what, I went golfing the other day, and the guy asked me if I qualified for the senior discount. Hurt my feelings just a little bit, but at the same time, I was like, how much is that discount?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I keep getting things for the AARP card, and I'm sort of thinking, not yet, but think, no, actually, I qualify.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm sort of thinking, I'll let that 10% off at Shoney's, so I think this is going to be pretty good.
There's some real advantages.
There are, yeah.
There's some real advantages. Kate, I was interested to hear you talking about doing more for the older horse, and that was something that I've had a lot of interest in throughout my career. I went through we had a large farm that had a problem with strangles, and we went through and scoped the guttural pouches of all those horses. But I was shocked with the pathology that a lot of those mares are living with. And so it made me think we ought to be doing, a annual physical exam on these horses, which doesn't get done. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a lot of things we could do for our older horses to help keep them in the breeding population longer, or just to have them have a more comfortable life. What do you guys think? What are some things we could be doing for our older horses? Healthy longer.
Yeah, as far as like the metabolic profile, looking at the trends in their hormones like ACTH, like pituitary hormones, insulin, leptin, some of those things that are involved with metabolism. I mean, Kate can talk more extensively on this, but if we regularly look at the horse, we just want to see what is your trajectory, right? You go to the doctor, they're going to look at your cholesterol, they're looking at your A1C, they're looking at all these things to sort of see, what are the trends? Do we have to change your diet? Do we have to actually preemptively medicate you so you don't get to the position where you actually have a clinical episode? And I would like to think we will get to that point with horses. It's just that this is sort of a new frontier because, as Kate sort of elegantly said, like us, the equine population is getting older. Demographically, this country is changing, the world is changing, and horses live a lot longer than they used to because people talk about an old horse was like 18 to 20 years of age. I have people riding horses, they're out till 35. And they're still actually, now not every horse is going to get there, but you start to sort of see what's possible with good care and timely intervention when necessary. Not every horse is going to live to 35, but I've been shocked at the number of horses that actually live long and productive lives. And people talk about foaling mares. Well, someone was foaling mare at 22, and some said, oh man, that's just so old, why are they doing that? The oldest mare I foaled out was 28. And she came into this was before I was here, I was in Florida. It was this guy's last race mare. And he last foaled her at 22 and he retired her. And then he thought, you know what, I want one more foal. She was 28. She sat in the hospital, she lay down, she popped that foal out in 15 minutes, stood up, and they went home the next day. Now, things were very well signposted in there because plenty of foals said, this is the way out, right? The exit sign was well lit. But just because she was 28 didn't mean that she couldn't do what some mares struggle to in their mid to late teens, because she had been well maintained, and okay, genetically she was gifted, but she'd been, as I say, extremely well looked after. She did not look 28.
Yeah.
She looked really, she was in good flesh.
Yeah.
She had a good coat. Her feet were good because the guy had spent the money done the teeth. Is another thing. Like some of these males, the teeth are terrible. And we're looking at the horse. Why is the horse losing weight? People bring these things in. They've spent all sorts of money on supplements and all sorts of crazy stuff to deworm these things till the cows come home. You look in their mouth and it just looks like a shark. It's just that routine maintenance means you paid a lot of money for that horse. It's like a car. So you might as well drive that puppy as long as you can. And part of that is actually regular maintenance and partnering with us to make sure that you have the best care.
No, and I love the older mares too, and I always took a lot of pride in getting them in full and getting foals out of them, and not by performing miracles, but like you said, by just covering the basics.
Doing the basics well.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, excuse me, is recognizing that the needs of the foal or the needs of the younger horse or what we're looking at in those horses is a lot different from what we're looking at in an older animal. So, I mean, in humans, you have people that specialize in geriatric care because they know exactly what tests to run, what signs to look for. And I think a lot of us, honestly, I think from my perspective, a lot of us are getting more and more interested in geriatric medicine for horses because we all have horses that we, got in undergrad or had as teenagers. And my horse she's 29 this year. And I've had her for 20 years now. And I have a very strong interest in having her live a longer, happier, healthier life. And so things to think about, I think teeth is a big one. It used to be that you could have your horse's teeth looked at, once a year, once every couple of years, maybe they'd need a float every so often. But we've really made a lot of advances in dentistry to help these horses keep their teeth longer and have a happier, healthier mouth, which allows them to process their feeds better, which keeps them in better weight. A lot of our older horses will start shedding pounds because they need a more easily digestible food. They need a different percentage of fat or a different percentage of protein to really maintain their body condition versus when they were, 6, 7, or 8 years old and had different requirements. So as we're getting better at evaluating periodontal disease, dental caries, so horses get cavities, those can be managed. If we can keep those teeth in the mouth longer, then those horses can use their feed more efficiently over time. That is so huge, along with all the other things that I can test for, all the other medications we can give them. If you don't have good teeth that can process good quality feed and the kind of feed they need, those horses are going to start losing their condition, and that's when we often see problems that lead to euthanasias.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Awesome. Looks like we've got a question from the crowd.
Yes, I'm concerned about emerging infectious diseases. And I know the horse has been lucky in that it's never been documented that they've had prion diseases. Nothing's crossed over.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think something might eventually cross over, or is there any pre-surveillance in place, like warning signs, things to look for that, specific things, since most people don't even know about prion disease, but they might have heard of mad cow, but that's about it.
A lot of that comes from diet, too, and that's one of the big reasons we get it in our ruminants, our cattle, is because of how they're fed. But I'll let our medicine experts handle this.
Yeah, well, the problem was, talking about mad cow in England, the problem they made for themselves was they actually were feeding like byproducts from cattle back to cattle, right? When you think about that, why would you do that sort of cannibalism type thing? But that's where things became a bit of an issue, and these things became a problem, and it became a problem with people. And this is a timely question, because if any of you have been watching in the media, you've got that chronic wasting disease in deer currently in some parts of this country, and that's another one of these prion diseases. You're quite right in what you say. Nobody's seen one of those in horses, but the surveillance may not necessarily be direct, but there's a lot of horses that go to necropsy, get histology on their brain, and I'd expect to see the classic histological signs, and if there was no reason for those signs to happen, you'd start to think, hold it a second, there's an agent here we need to look for. So inadvertently, I would sort of say, especially in this area, because there's such a concentrated horse population, we would start to see the characteristic histological changes, and then would be asking the question. And you're right, mercifully, it has not been a problem to this point.
Yeah, because they are ugly diseases.
Yeah.
But I mean, certainly a lot of it is about vigilance on the veterinarian's part and, on the owner's part as well, to spot any of these emerging diseases. So if we see something that is different, that we're seeing in multiple horses, and this is kind of what led to the development of the testing for the rotavirus B, is that we all put our heads together from different clinics, from different farms, and said there is something going on that is not what it was before. And working together as a community with the researchers that we have available to us is, I think, what really allows us to go on and discover some of these new emerging diseases. And I think what it highlights is the importance of veterinarians working together, communicating with each other and with other members of the scientific community, because certainly not a single one of us knows how to diagnose. I don't know how to search for rotavirus B, but I know someone who does, and keeping those pathways and those dialogues open, I think, is not only important for that side of things, but also important for recruiting people to our career path. Keeping people involved is making sure that we're not competing with each other, but using the information that's coming out of multiple areas to do the best for the horse, and try to improve those health conditions that way. So I think it's a very important area that we all could probably improve on every day, but we work on.
You guys ever had to call the state vet?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, they didn't call me too.
we've all had that situation where we've been in a field situation, when I did a different type of practice, and I looked at this and sort of said, I think I need to call the federales on this one, because there was something there that looked very, very suspicious. Luckily, it turned out not to be that, but even the state vet came out, looked, and it says, oh boy, but luckily it wasn't.
Yeah.
So, but again, it was just, the point that's just been made is we're actually basically the first line for an exotic disease coming in, and we all go through every couple of years to fill out health certificates and that type of thing. We have to go through training, and a lot of that is recognize exotic diseases, right? So if you happen to look in a horse's mouth and you see blisters, right, you start to think of all the things that could be, and this is how these things are found. This is how outbreaks are first diagnosed, is by people in the field finding these things and having enough background knowledge to know that this is not normal and perhaps we better take this seriously.
So I don't think we have any more from the crowd, but I have one final question to kind of end this thing out. So we were at the horse park, a place that celebrates horses, has lots of horse activities going on. So I was just wondering, kind of from each of your perspectives, a favorite memory that you have with the horse, or kind of what inspired you to work in the equine industry, especially helping horses with their care?
For me, that was pretty simple. I have an ag background, and from a very early age, I remember I was getting ready to go to a birthday party. They were going pizza, swimming, all the stuff little kids like, and my grandpa was getting ready to gather cows, and he'd brought the horses up and had them tied up, and I just remember being really sad. I was going to this birthday party that I wasn't gonna be there and riding with Grandpa. And so when my dad kicked me off the farm and said go find another pathway, it was an easy choice for me to I fell in love with the horse and horse racing at a very early age, and it's a beautiful thing. They're beautiful animals, and just being around them is a lot of fun.
So I actually grew up on a dairy farm, real young, at probably 6 or 7. And I was helping our vet do a DA surgery on a cow, and I asked quite a few questions. Didn't stop talking, I don't think, through the whole procedure. And at the end, she's like, you know what, you make a good vet. So I went home, told my parents I was going to be a vet, and then never looked back. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. I'm really happy where I'm at. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. It's a very rewarding job. I'm thankful for the path that I went down.
So I come from a medical background. My family, they're all human doctors. My mother was dismayed for a little while, but now she's very excited and proud of my job. She was a human neonatologist or ER pediatrician. So she loves foaling season because she gets to hear about all the cool things that we do with the foals here. So it's been really fun to figure that out with her. And then I did grow up downtown Halifax, which seems it's probably smaller than a lot of other downtowns, but they have a historic building down there where they house 18 horses and give riding lessons. It's called the Halifax Junior Bengal Lancers, and I would walk downtown every day, and they are right in the middle of downtown. We had our own stoplight to walk across the busy street when we went out to ride, and I would sit there for hours watching them. So I really fell in love with the horse there. And my favorite thing about growing up there is no one had their own horse. We all rode the horses that belonged to that riding center, so everyone was on the same foot no matter what. You all groomed, you all cleaned stalls, you all swept, you all fed, you all had shifts on the weekends where you took care of the horses. So I really fell in love with that, and combining that with my family's medical history, I knew I really wanted to do this from that age. So I started riding when I was 5, and I stopped riding when I had kids, but I'll get back there one day. But it's been fun showing them horses. They come to work with me all the time. They have their own special shoes for the ICU building. So it's been really fun kind of showing them my love of horses, and they ride my horse more than I do. So we got to keep her living forever. That's why.
Yeah. So yeah, my background's pretty interesting. I go like David. I grew up on a dairy farm. In New Zealand, cows eat grass, get rounded up twice a day, get milked, and get kicked out on the grass. And I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with my life, but I decided it could be good to be a veterinarian. And so it was good. I thought, I started off in dairy practice. I was going to be a dairy practitioner. And my dad said something really strange when I graduated. He said, oh, named my grandfather, said, he'd be really proud right now. And I never really picked up on it. And then I sort of found out a few years into my career that my grandfather, my mother's father, had always wanted to be a veterinarian. And he was an extremely good horseman. And he was also set to go to be a veterinarian. And the First World War broke out. And so he didn't get to go to be a veterinarian. And he didn't get to be a horse vet, but he got put in a mounted regiment because he's such a good horseman, and that was a little bit of an honor. And so I'm sort of doing it for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Each other
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just so I thought, he missed out, but I got the chance, so I'm going to do it. And I found horses very challenging at vet school. I still think they're large, dangerous animals, but they're a challenge. Right, and so I always thought horses were a challenge, but I thought, no, I'm going to do it for him. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. That's same lot for me too. I've got horsemen in my pedigree, so it's part of who we are.
On my dad's side, we're dairy farmers and builders, and on my mother's side, we're sort of, I'm not sure really, but there's a lot of horse people in there.
So I'd like to encourage all of our listeners, if you're in Lexington, to come to the horse park. This place is phenomenal.
Yep.
It's a true gem, not just in Lexington or Kentucky, but for the horse world. The horse park is incredible. And would like to remind everybody to get on StallSide, hit that like button, and join us as often as you can.
You may not like us, but who can't like Bart, right? I mean, you just got to, he's just so cuddly. So that was StallSide for this week. We're grateful to the Kentucky Horse Park for letting us come out here. I thank my co-host, Bart Barber, for always being a good wingman or pilot, I'm not sure what. David Alexander, I'd like to thank him taking his time today from his busy practice to race here from a horse, covered in horsehair, and he's probably going off to see another one right now. Thank my colleague, Kate Christie, who suffers along with me at this time of year when there's only 24 hours a day and we work 27 of them. And I'm just really grateful to you turning out today and being part of the audience. And so that was StallSide for this week. See you next time.